Good afternoon, everyone. Almost evening, almost Thanksgiving time. I'm super happy today to welcome Sam Bencheghib back to Lehigh in our virtual world here. I see a number of names popping up on our attendee list that I'm super happy are here and that are looking for current stories. So I can tell you, Sam, I don't know if you can see the list, but we've got everybody from current students in classes that you've participated in, like independent studies and those types of classes, all the way through some of your former mentors and coaches, Joe Starrett, a whole number of people that are on this call. I want to give a specific shout out before we get into this to kind of the three organizing and supporting organizations here that have kind of helped get Sam back on campus. So obviously athletics. Sam's a former athlete, former tennis player at Lehigh. And has used many of those skill sets in the entrepreneurial pursuits that he's had. So thank you to Julie Starrett and Julia Amari and the whole athletics team over there with Katie Quinn and Kate and everybody there. In addition to that, Bill Hunter with the UN partnership and who has also headed up a number of the different sustainable development initiatives on campus. Huge shout out to him for helping kind of initiate this. He had actually initially asked Sam to come on campus and we said, well, can we do it even bigger and have a bunch of people involved? And Bill, helped us out get that going. And then with Lisa Gessler and the rest of the Baker Institute team that I'm part of, thank you for just helping organize the entrepreneurial perspective. We've got those three stems tonight that we're going to be getting Sam's perspective on and hear his story about. We've got the athletics perspective, the entrepreneurship perspective, and the sustainable development perspective that we're going to have in this conversation. So thank you so much for spending time with us today, Sam. I want to just start off by making sure that everybody gets an understanding of your story. So you've got this incredible story from growing up in Bali all the way through not taking a real job and committing to running across the country and the guts that it took to do that. So can you give us the rundown of like, what's the Make a Change World story and your story that brought you here today?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. Thank you to Bill Hunter. Thank you to the Baker Institute. Thank you to the athletics department as well. But it's always a pleasure to come back, although this is virtual. It is always a pleasure to be connected again to my old Lehigh family. But yeah, to give you guys a little bit of a background, I'm from France. So my family is originally from Paris. And then when I was 7 years old, my family moved out to Bali in Indonesia, this beautiful paradise. But unfortunately, the beaches are pristine, white sand beaches, crystal blue water, beautiful rice fields, beautiful culture. But when you walk on the beaches and you walk on the rice fields and you look at the rivers, there's a big problem of plastic pollution. So very quickly, I started realizing that Bali is this paradise, but it's trashed. So with my older brother Gary and my older sister Kelly, at the time I was 12 years old, we started doing beach cleanups because when we were 12 years old, or really young kids, we didn't really know what to do and how to solve this problem. But we realized that we had two hands, and we can easily dedicate an hour of our time on any given Saturday and clean up beaches. So we did that every weekend. And what started as a small beach cleanup movement, where we invited our friends, we invited our families, eventually grew to a small movement at the time that we called Make a Change Bali. Where we would invite, anywhere between 100 to 300, sometimes 500 people every single weekend to clean up the beaches. But, what we quickly realized is that although it was great and, an hour later, there is no more plastic, you'd walk on that beach the next morning and all of it is back. And so we did some research, we, studied it a little bit and realized that 90% of all of the plastic in the ocean and on our beaches and on our shorelines come from land-based sources. So things like rivers, waterways, creeks, gutters. And so we completely shifted our efforts from beach cleanups to really trying to clean rivers and also education and awareness campaigns. And so that, fast forward a few years, I was playing tennis throughout this time. And so I went to Spain to play tennis, and then eventually found Lehigh, great tennis team, great business program. And I wanted to, pursue an education, but also continue playing tennis. But in those 10 years since I was 12, my brother went to film school. And essentially now Make a Change is an environmental organization that tries to come up with campaigns that can create tangible change and raise awareness and education on plastic pollution, and really trying to get plastic pollution on front page news, and getting the world to know about the urgency to act now. So we've done a few campaigns that range from smaller video series that talk about the unsung heroes around the world, or people who are doing amazing work in the environmental space, or on the little bit more crazy side, which is what we like to say, there's no idea that's crazy enough when it comes to our planet and protecting our environment. So the first campaign that we did was 3 years ago. We Googled, so I was a sophomore at Lehigh, and I Googled most polluted river in the world. And at the time, the first thing that showed up was this river called the Citarum River. It was located in Indonesia, so in our own backyards. And that summer, I stayed with my brother in Brooklyn, and we came up with a concept of essentially going down the most polluted river, or the Citarum River, on the very same materials that pollute it, which was plastic bottles. So we went back to Bali, built these two super basic plastic bottle kayaks with a bamboo frame and a recycled fishing net to hold all the bottles together, and decided to go down the world's most polluted river for 2 weeks. Brought 2 cameras with us, and just filmed our journey, highlighted amazing initiatives along the river that were trying to clean up the river. And we were super amazed to see that after 2 weeks of releasing our videos on Facebook, we got a lot of attention, a lot of views, and essentially 4 weeks later get a letter from the Minister of the Environment inviting us to Jakarta, the capital, to tell us that after our campaign and our video series, they wanted to create an emergency plan to clean up the Citarum River. And we waited, and eventually get an invite back to the river. 4 months after going down the river, unfortunately, I was at Lehigh, but my brother went to the event, and there he met with the Indonesian president, who told him that as a result of our campaign, he was going to hire 7,000 military soldiers to clean up the Citarum River. And we're now celebrating almost the 3-year points. So this coming February is going to be 3 years since the start of the cleanup, and we're seeing massive improvements in the quality of the water. But what's really shocking about the Citarum is that it's one river. It's one of the most polluted, yes, but it's one river of hundreds, if not thousands, of rivers like this in Southeast Asia, where millions and millions of people rely on this water to live. They use it to boil. They boil the water, and then they cook their food in this water. So it's devastating, but that really opened our eyes again to the power of campaigns and the power and the importance of rivers. And so after graduating from Lehigh, I thought about,
I'm going to be chief interrupting officer all night tonight, because I know there's so many different segments of your story, and I want to make sure we get to a bunch of them. So before we get into some of the run details, you were talking about, you've had this initial success with you made this awareness that happened, right? You did this fun thing with your brother, it took off, and you've gotten real change as a result of it. You were talking a couple weeks ago when we touched base about some of those guiding principles that kind of now guide and were built out of some of these early successes and now guide a lot of your decision making. Can you share out some of those guiding principles? The think big and differently. That list that you had before was super impactful. That kind of packaged up how this worked for you, the lessons you learned in some of those early ones, and how it's now guiding your decision making at the current stage.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that through the few campaigns that I've been a part of, we've kind of established that there's a kind of a set of principles that we always follow. There's 5 of them, and so if I could go through them real quick, the first one is to think big and to think outside the box. When you think of problems like plastic pollution, sometimes it's very easy to get overwhelmed and not necessarily know how to solve a problem like this. And I think that thinking outside the box, whether it's coming up with the most creative way of raising awareness about this problem, such as building plastic bottle kayaks or running across the United States, I think it's important to think big and yeah, and just think differently, because everyone's kind of heard the problems, but people want to, hear about them in maybe in a different light. The second is to find allies, and collaboration, I think, is probably one of the most important things when trying to solve a social issue like plastic pollution. So through these multiple campaigns, we always collaborate with local nonprofits, people on the ground directly. For example, especially with the Chitaram River being two white brothers going down a very rural river in Indonesia, it could have been very easily taken the wrong way. And so collaborating with local partners is essential. And so finding allies is that second point. The third is to spread positivity. And I think when you're talking about any social issue, people know what the problems are, but they want to know what the solutions are. And so really focusing on the solutions and highlighting those who are doing, incredible work or ready to fight that specific problem is really important. The fourth is to get the message out there and really utilizing the tools that we have at our fingertips to get as many people to hear about the project that you're doing or the cause that you're fighting. And I think nowadays it's so easy with social media, which is really the tool that we've utilized through our campaigns, videos and the power of camera. I think throughout history, cameras have really been an incredible source of just reaching, the masses, and so has social media recently. And finally, the last one is to be persistent. And I think when you look at most successful campaigns that have really changed structures, they sometimes last between 10 to 15 years. And so, as an activist or someone trying to solve a social issue, I think you really have to be resilient and resourceful and realize that persistency and just never giving up is key. And I think that that's maybe the most important one of those 5 principles, is to really just never give up. And, through that, change can happen.
Excellent. So as in preparation for this, I kind of asked Bill Hunter and Julie for some questions from their different perspectives. And so that persistence ties into one of Bill Hunter's perspectives, which is just really looking at the run itself. So if you could just give an overview of like, why did you do that run? And then in that run, when it was so hard, right? Because this wasn't just a, difficulty in being persistent to make a change world. It was also a physical persistence that was required in there. So when it got so hard, what kept motivating you? What kept you to keep pushing on? And even now, right? Times are hard. Media companies aren't always going to be successful. So what's that kind of thing that motivates you to be persistent in those times?
Mm-hmm. Well, to give a little bit background, of the run, I ran from New York to Los Angeles, so 3,055 miles, approximately 23 miles a day. So it definitely is a lot of running. It's not easy to wake up every day and I guess try to push through the pain, push through the mental barriers. But to answer your question, what kept me going? And I think it's interesting because having never really been a runner and never really having run a marathon prior to doing the run, it really was, I think there's multiple reasons that really kept me going, but the cause was definitely the main one. But also just seeing the response of the people that I met along the way and seeing how the positive feedback. Every time I spoke to a school, for example, along my journey, the kids were just so inspired and motivated to change their consumption habits. And to me, that was extremely motivating. And then physically, I guess, well, you have to, follow the basics and, ice, elevate your legs, get a good night's sleep, try to get a good nutrition. And I was, I guess the good thing with running 23 miles a day is that you have 24 hours to complete the run. So I wasn't racing anybody. I wasn't trying to get to LA at any time. When I first started my run, I told everyone it would take me 160 days, but it took me 191 days. So, having the time to finish and complete the run was really important for me because the end goal wasn't necessarily to finish the run and get to LA, the end goal was to inspire as many people as possible to live more sustainably, or at least to become a little bit more aware of the problem.
So in that journey, we know Julie and her work with the athletics department in the leadership area. You know, there are these core principles there, and one of them is self-awareness, right? One of the pillars is self-awareness. So one of her questions, and I intentionally did not send you these questions in advance so we could get your, like, this is for the audience. He doesn't know what questions are coming, so these are like his live thoughts here. So in that journey across America, what's the thing that you realized about yourself in that time, right? What did you realize about yourself in that run across the country in those 191 days?
It's a great question. What did I learn about myself? I think I definitely learned, and this is something that I've been chasing since my run. And it's that feeling of, I guess, you know, I mean, I don't know how to say this, but it was so easy because I knew exactly what my end goal was. It was getting to 23 miles or getting to that next city. And now that I'm in New York, you know, working for myself, don't really have deadlines. It's really just me working for myself, trying to come up with different projects. No, that wasn't a good answer. Let me think of a better one.
That's a great answer, right? Your idea, you've always been you've had this ability to set goals, right? And I've seen that in you and just the time that we've worked together when you were an undergraduate student. You could set a goal and you could work towards that, but you were always in an environment where those goals were a little bit more clear than they are now, right? So even if now it's a struggle, it doesn't mean that's not something that you've had that self-awareness with, right? I think that's.
Yeah, no, I think you've actually, you definitely described that really well. It's definitely, you know, right now with everything going on, it's definitely harder to set goals. And so that's definitely something I learned about myself as well. Having, you know, I think I sometimes set goals that are too long-term, and that negatively impacts the work that I do. And I think I need to focus more and remind myself that, you know, smaller steps and, you know, those lead to a bigger goal at the end.
Yeah, and so I really appreciate that you're willing to share that side of it, kind of that current struggle, because a lot of times, you know, myself and I know seeing some students on this call, I know many of the students that I've talked to about your story, we see this story as everything works and Sam can just go do this and it's easy and he just makes it happen, right? So being able to see that side of it's not always easy, right? Like it was incredibly hard at points in that run. It was incredibly hard to figure out, like, do I really want to be in New York now? Is this really where I should be? Should I be getting a job? Can I have more impact over here, right? The fact that you do have those struggles is, I really appreciate that you're willing to share that, because it actually helps a lot to be able to say, you don't have to have it all figured out all the time, right? And it's okay to go kind of take those next steps. So along that line, one of the things that we've seen in your story that has been so impactful, you mentioned it with your run, you, Sam Bencheghib, are able to inspire groups of people to think differently about something and go take action of their own, right? You mentioned it in the early days of getting hundreds of people to a beach, and you've mentioned it, you know, through your run and being able to inspire these young kids. So how do you actually, you know, on that mission of awareness, on that mission of plastic reduction, you've got this mission. How have you figured out how to do that inspiration side of it, right? Where it's less tangible, but you've somehow created that in your business and in yourself to be able to inspire. How do you do that?
I'm just gonna say, from looking at, I'm not saying that I'm a great leader, but I'm saying, I think looking at the leaders that really inspire me, they don't necessarily inspire me because of the way of what they're saying, or of perhaps something they've decided to do, but more because of their passion and how bought in to their idea they are. And I think that maybe And to be honest, I don't even know if I inspire people. I don't know if people are inspired by the work that I do, but I think that if they are, it's probably because I'm so bought in and I really do this with my heart, uh, and I try to dedicate, well, pretty much my life is my work. So maybe and probably that would be the answer to your question.
Well, so I know you are humble, and I can tell you, because you would never say this about yourself, you absolutely do. And we have seen it. Many of us on this call have seen it across campus in many different ways. And certainly it's happening outside of just Lehigh's campus now that you've moved on from Lehigh and are doing it in bigger and better ways out there. So one of Bill Hunter's questions was around this idea of passion, around the idea of finding that voice. So somehow you were able to translate your passion for solving this problem and created a voice for yourself there. Do you have any recommendations on like how other people can go from being passionate about the environment or passionate about a particular cause, but then translating that passion into action or inspiration or creating a voice of their own? How have you made that shift from caring to actually doing something about it in the world?
I think it's really starting small. For example, being in New York right now, I'm really focused on trying to develop the media side of Make a Change. And with coming here during the pandemic, I moved here in June. People were a lot less willing to go on film. And so I started filming myself, which is something I was not really comfortable with. But I think just the matter of starting, as soon as you start, things start to happen. You start realizing that, this might not work, but something else might work instead. And I saw that, in the films that I do. But so I think in order to convert passion to action, it's really just starting small and, whatever that is, whether it's, getting a group together of friends and speaking about it or speaking about an issue, that might bring about other ideas. Really staying open-minded when speaking to others, and really having everybody's opinion heard. Brainstorming with as many people as possible is something that I try to do as often as I can.
Yeah, and so I love that translation of the passion to action. We forget a lot of times when we see somebody who's executing at your level now, right, where you are taking on bigger projects and things that take more planning or more initiative or more time to figure out, that we forget that your story that you started with today started with like, we had two hands, we could walk out to the beach and pick up some plastic. Like that's what you could take, that's the small action you could take then. Mm-hmm. And so shifting this into the entrepreneurial perspective a little bit now to see how your business is working and where that's going. The same thing happens in entrepreneurship, right? We all think like, oh, Facebook's so big. Well, Facebook started with connecting one person to one other person on one single college campus, and that was all that they did. And it took years of time to grow into where they are now. So from the entrepreneurial perspective for you, where do you see yourself in that space, right? Do you see yourself early stage and you're like, we're just trying to figure out how the heck we're going to make some money and make this thing sustainable? And where do you think your company is going? Do you see yourself staying in environmental media? I know you've got some other projects going with the river dam or the river trash collecting system. So could you talk about that side of it? What are you doing entrepreneurially? How are you sustaining yourself? How are you going to sustain yourself in the future?
I think that's a great question, and it really does tie into the previous question you just asked. And it is starting small. And every single project that I've started, or with my brother and my sister, it always ends up becoming something different and just, pivots completely. So with Make a Change, originally, beach cleanup organization to media company, kind of, and then expeditions kind of came out of the blue. And then one expedition led to another. We did 5 expeditions. And then my brother, being in Bali, saw that there was a crazy amount of trash. And so I was like, what if we just put a little barrier here? And that was in November of last year. And that's really now the priority of Make a Change, is cleaning rivers, engineering systems that prevent plastic from going into the ocean in the first place. So I think that we're completely in the like super early phases of who we are and what we do. I think both on the media side, although we've made a few hundred videos, like I look at the production of our videos and I say like it could be so much better. And so I think we're in the super early stages, especially with the river cleanup program that we're starting in Indonesia. We started in November of last year, thinking that we could have one successful trash barrier. We now have 7 we're implementing 2 new barriers a week at this point, with the goal of having 25 by the end of this year and 100 barriers by the end of next year. And because that really, that really does feel like a startup, because we now have a team at home, we have an engineer, and every day things are changing, and every day we have problems that we have to solve, and our solutions aren't working. We have to change the solution. Now we have an immense inventory of plastic, and it's like, what do we do with the plastic? And I know we've had so many conversations about this, but so now we're thinking about what to do with the plastic and how we can one, create a product. So that again is an entire different business, and also potentially creating something that I think could potentially be the future of Make a Change. Who knows? Is creating a plastic offset. So we have a lot of carbon offsets out there, big organizations who can fund these carbon offset companies to be carbon neutral. But it does not exist really. There's a few organizations doing it, but not a lot. So we're exploring that idea of creating a plastic offset, because we're collecting 25 to 150 pounds of plastic per river per solution a day. So 7 solutions a day, 25 to 150 pounds times 7 times 365, that's today. But this time next year, we'll be at 80 rivers. So we're collecting this massive amount of plastic. And if we can offset that and offer people the opportunity to, like, I use 2 bottles of plastic today, I'm gonna, give Make a Change 60 cents or whatever, so that I can be plastic neutral. That's not, I guess that's an idea, but obviously we want people to stop using plastic. But no, I think we're very much in the early stages of Make a Change, really still figuring it out. And I think the more projects we take on, the more we meet people who are introducing us to these ideas, such as the plastic offset.
So this has been a common theme in your entire experience at Lehigh that I've seen, and that I've seen in you since, and I've told you this many times. Your ability to pick something and then go and execute on that thing that you've selected is just exceptional, right? You say, I'm going to go do this, and then you actually go do it. And whether the outcome is perfect or not doesn't matter, because you've ended that experience by learning this colossal amount. And that's given you the ability to start over here and then shift over here and then see river cleanup over here and find these new opportunities, because you're continuously able to execute on the goals and the missions that you're setting out to do in these spaces. So from the sustainable perspective, we see lots of companies and individuals interested in this type of work, right? Reduce plastic, save the environment, stop climate change. But a lot of times people get frustrated with the larger organizations for things like greenwashing and saying, yeah, I want to do this, right? And we care about this. And so here we'll say we're doing this, right? But in reality, that's a little different on the back end. And on individual levels, we see the same thing. I'm certainly guilty of it. Like, I care about this, but I also drive this car and I do this activity and I bought that, soda last week in that bottle, right? So how do you find the balance there between doing things that are, preventing that greenwashing so that it's just a surface level thing that's not actually making the impact, and actually creating impactful changes, but that might not be the prettiest things at the end of the day, right? Putting trash barriers up isn't the elegant thing that somebody gets to go say, look how beautiful my reusable water bottle is, but it's making a big impact, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you find that balance? What are your thoughts on the greenwashing, and how we can go about getting more motivation around real change, as opposed to just kind of popular opinion to say the environment is a good thing and we want to make it cleaner?
I think that's a really hard thing to distinguish, because a lot of people, I mean, so many companies are now, like you said, doing, promoting their products, saying that they're sustainable. But then, like, I think, for example, one thing that infuriates me is the plastic compostable cups at restaurants and coffee stores. Those are not compostable. They're not backyard compostable, and most composting sites won't accept them. So that's total greenwashing. They're better than plastic, yes, but they still end up in a landfill and take hundreds of years to decompose. So it's tough. I mean, I think in a way that, for example, the compostable plastic is a step in the right direction, but it's really hard, I think. And actually, the other day I was speaking to, it was really interesting. I gave a speech to Wilson, the Wilson HQ in Chicago, and they just came out with, being a tennis player, obviously I love new like sports technologies. They just came out with a new tennis ball that's 3 times as durable as their old tennis balls, and packaged in cardboard boxes. And in like throughout dozens of years, tennis balls have been in this plastic container, and you can only imagine how much plastic that is. And apparently, professional tennis players are hitting with these balls, saying that they're very similar to the old ones. So I think it takes some very forward-thinking people to work for those companies, because obviously, any other tennis company or sports company could have done the same thing as Wilson, 10 years back. But it's only this year that they're incorporating these new solutions. So I think it's really difficult. I think, yeah.
Great. So I just want to invite the audience. If anybody has questions that you'd like to ask Sam, you're welcome to just put them in the chat, and I'll kind of call those out as needed as we're moving forward here in the last couple of minutes that we have with Sam. So if anybody has those, just feel free to dump them in the chat, and we will try and get to those as we can. Julie also wanted to ask about one of the other pillars, which is toughness, right? So what does toughness look like for you these days, right? We kind of know what it looked like for you as an athlete, but how is that translated into kind of your current work, and how does that show up for you these days?
Well, I think, with a lot of videos, because I'm so involved in video and content creation right now, as a content creator, you're almost seen as someone expected, or you're expected to come up with the coolest stuff, all the time. Every time I put out a new piece of content, I always expect or want my next piece to be better. That's just, something that the way that I work, and I think a lot of content creators relate to that. But that's just impossible, and I don't think it's a healthy way of thinking. Yeah, how does toughness relate to the way that I also just, with video storytelling and video making, there's always so much negative hate. And so I guess tuning out the noise of people who don't necessarily agree or like what you're creating, but realizing that you're doing it for something way bigger than yourself. And I know for a fact that if someone watches this video, they might learn something from it. So if you have something bad to say, if it's constructive criticism, I'll take it. If not, I won't even read it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I've never actually thought about it in that way, that the athletics training of being, mentally tough, emotionally tough in the hardest point in the game, when somebody's clearly not rooting for you, right? You've got an opponent that wants you to lose, and their team wants you to lose. And the fact that you're able to bring that into the modern day in your current work of having that same resilience tied into those comments, that's a connection I had never thought of before.
Yeah, it's true. Something that actually just that you said that resonates is, any sport actually, but when you're down in a match or in a game, you can't just lose hope and just give up. The same with a video. If you make a video, it gets no views, or you only get negative hate, you get dislikes instead of likes, the next one's going to be better. And, you got to keep working and striving towards creating better content and more inspirational work. And yeah, very much in line with sports.
So for the many students that are on this call right now, you're somebody that they can directly relate to, right? You only graduated a year or two ago. You're a recent alum. You're living your vision, right? You're saying, I wanted to solve this problem, and now you're actually going and really working on it. So do you have any advice for students in any real spectrum, right, about their time at Lehigh and what they should be trying to do, where their heads should be at? Any advice to current students to hopefully get to a point where they're able to execute on their kind of dreams and visions in the way that you're able to right
now? I think it's easy especially as an athlete, to really just focus on school and athletics and not necessarily explore other opportunities. I look back at my 4 years and I regret not, spending more time with the Baker Institute, or, exploring other opportunities, really spending more time, for example, in the journalism department. And I think that that's something that Lehigh has so many, there are so many opportunities, and I guess really exploring all of them, spending, just exploring, just trying new things. Because, when you're out of school, you're either working full-time on something and you don't really have the time that you did at school, to explore new things and try different things.
Great. So I'm going to jump in with just a shout out that I did not ask Sam to say any of that, but the fact that he did, I'll throw a shout out right now that in this past semester, in partnership with athletics, between Baker and athletics, we've created an opportunity for that, right? Allowing athletes to think outside of their current disciplines. And so we've created a program called the Home Field Advantage Program, where we have athletes using some of those natural athletic skills like we've talked about, right? The toughness and the self-awareness that actually translate into the entrepreneurial world very well. And we're applying those mindsets and skill sets to housing problems, housing issues, affordable housing issues in the US. And so anybody that's interested in hearing those pitches, this Thursday, we're going to have an event where those students will be pitching live to some alumni judges who will be reviewing those projects and seeing if those teams want to move forward with any of those ideas. So we're listening to your feedback, Sam. We're trying to get more opportunities for athletes and others around campus to break outside of some of the usual pillars that we're in around campus. So if anybody's interested in that, you can check out the Baker Institute's website for information on that. And if there's athletes on this call, you can look at that, because we'll be hopefully doing some other version of that moving forward next semester.
That's definitely, I think that's definitely super incredible that you guys are, collaborating, because although, I just said that you should try to explore other opportunities, it can be difficult with time management. Obviously, as an athlete, you're working, extra hours. And so the fact that there's that relationship now is truly, hopefully, very, very meaningful. And hopefully a lot of athletes will use that to their advantage.
Yes, well, you were in many of those early stage thought processes of, if we can get more students like Sam, Lehigh will be better overall. So how can we make more opportunities to create more students like Sam, where you found your own path, and when hopefully we can make it a little easier for some others. So we only have a few more minutes here. So I just wanted to kind of open it up to you, Sam, to kind of share your current mentality in where the world is at currently in terms of plastic pollution and the environment, right? Are you feeling hopeful? Are you feeling scared? Are you excited? Where is your head at as somebody who really thinks and lives and breathes this every day? Where's your head at?
I think I'm a very optimistic person, so I'm always going to be hopeful. But I think there's a lot of work to be done. You look at the production of plastic today, and it's expected to double by 2030. Right now, approximately 11 million tons of plastic is entering the ocean every single year. And that number is only going to increase with obviously production of plastic getting bigger. So I think it's going to have to take a lot of collaboration, and I think we're seeing a lot more competition, in our world, which is a good thing, because that means more people are trying to solve this issue. For example, cleaning rivers is not a very cool thing to be doing. 10 years ago, cleaning rivers was definitely not cool. Now it's becoming cool, and it's funny because when I was like maybe 7 or 8 and growing up in France, my mom would always tell me, like we'd see the garbage trucks go by, and she'd tell me, like, don't you want to go to school and you don't want to be a garbage man? And like now I'm literally a garbage man pretty much. I'm like picking up plastic for a living, but it's becoming more cool. It's becoming, more brands are like Adidas, for example. Now it's a huge part of their marketing. Patagonia. So I'm hopeful. I think that people are starting to catch on. I think it's going to take a lot more work, and I think that's why campaigns are so powerful. And I think I'm going to continue to try to come up with crazy ideas to raise awareness about plastic and really create tangible change. And maybe what's difficult with that is knowing where to start, especially in countries like Southeast Asia. There's a huge lack of waste management, and that's mainly the reason why it's so polluted. And so having forward-thinking engineers come to places like Indonesia to find ways to either find a new material to plastic, or we're seeing a lot more plastic to petrol plants getting built in Indonesia. So I'm hopeful. There's a lot of exciting updates in the plastic world. We're seeing plastic now made out of seaweed. We're seeing plastic made out of potato starch. So I think it's only a matter of time before someone comes up with a new material. And I'm definitely hopeful, but there's a lot of work to be done.
So I always appreciate that about you, and that you always come off with a positive light, right? Despite how much you know about this and how many scary numbers there are out there, you're always approaching it from that optimistic perspective. So along with appreciations, one of the ways that at the Baker Institute we like to end sessions like this, and I would encourage anybody that has one of these to put it in the chat. We like to end with appreciations. So appreciations are really simple. What's something that you appreciate about Sam, about what he shared today, about his story, about something you're taking away from this session? So instead of me just saying, hey, thanks, Sam, I think you're awesome, right? We actually get the audience to be able to share some of those impacts. So if you have any of those thoughts, put them in the chat. That will be helpful. I know for somebody like Sam, that's the impactful thing. He said earlier, what motivated him is the impact that he was able to have in that run, right? So he keeps giving his time back to things like this for that impact. So my appreciation to you, Sam, is that you are not too famous for us yet, right? You instantaneously are coming back and saying, yes, I'll do it, I'll talk. There's never a hesitation in your willingness to come back, share your story, and hopefully inspire others to follow in your path. So I really appreciate just your time. But more importantly than that, I just truly appreciate your continued execution, but in a way where you're so humble in that all the time, right? So you come across just as, I'm doing this because I believe in it, and I 100% believe, because I am a convert to you, in that's your leadership skill, right? You come across as somebody who's so genuine and so passionate, and you're inspiring people because of that. And so I really appreciate that you're just able to do that, and you're not forcing it. It's just natural in you, and you're developing that over time. So I'm going to share on a couple of these other appreciations that are coming through in the chat, just so everybody can hear them. So from Lisa Gessler, I appreciate Sam's willingness to reveal his vulnerability, not just his strengths. So appreciate that. From Justin, willingness to go out and do it. So that execution, right? You just go out and do it and show that anything is possible. From Bill, I hope my kids grow up to become someone like you, an activist with a passion and to achieve the goal. From Stacy, willingness to recognize problems, the problem and owning it, right? So you said multiple times, like, yeah, I don't know how to do this quite that well. And you just own that and you're able to go do something about it. From Katie Gwynn, your optimism, can-do spirit, and sharing both with us today and tonight. From Joe Sterrett, to share over and over again your passion and acknowledgement of the challenges that remain. So it's not all positive, but that you're able to continuously share this and be able to bring that forward. And lastly, from Julie here, for your leadership, you continue to put ideas into action for real tangible change. Your relentless optimism and vulnerability are the epitome of toughness, right? So
that was a lot of compliments, but thank you all so much for those very kind words. And it's, to me, I'm very grateful to have gone to Lehigh and to have really a sense of family. It really does feel like a sense of family and a community where, every time I'm in New York and I see someone running, I run every day still along the East River or the Hudson River. It's just so nice to see, a Lehigh logo, and just, being invited to talks like this is always amazing, knowing that, you guys are still thinking of me out there, and that, no, thank you for everything. Obviously, without the Baker Institute and Lehigh Athletics, Bill Hunter as well, obviously, I'd be a very different person. So thank you for everything.
Well, I can promise you that there is a team of people still rooting for you at Lehigh, and we will continue to have your back. So if everything falls apart in New York, like, I'm sure you could find 100 different places to come live again and move forward in some other way. So we've got your back here. Thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. Hope everyone enjoyed this. We have recorded this session, so if there are people that weren't able to attend, we will have a link to be able to share that out to others that you think might appreciate this conversation. So thanks so much, Sam. Have a great night, and we will see you sometime soon.
Thank you so much. I look forward to coming back on campus in person. Thanks, Chris.
See ya.